It's likely that many people who know the story of Tristan and Isolde only from Richard Wagner's music drama are unaware that in order to win the Irish princess Isolde as bride for his uncle, King Mark, Tristan, as so often in these kinds of stories, had to slay a dragon. Gottfried von Strasberg tells us the Irish King German had promised the hand of his daughter Isolde in marriage to any knight who could rid his kingdom of the beast, but all who had tried had failed. Tristan succeeded in vanquishing the dragon, though not without some difficulties, the most vexing being the loss of his horse. Facing a rather long walk back to German's castle, Tristan decided to cut out the tongue of the dragon in order to have a means of proving his deed. He tucked this grisly keepsake inside his vest and then lay down to rest. But Tristan perhaps forgot that dragon's blood is a powerful poison, and the noxious fumes the severed tongue emitted put him into a state of unconsciousness. Now while Tristan lay helpless, another knight came across the dead dragon. This man was the Irish king's seneschal who had tried before to battle the dragon, as he dearly wanted the hand of Princess Isolde, but he found himself retreating in terror at the very sight of it. Now, finding the corpse of the dragon and the remains of a horse, he assumed the dragon's slayer to have been killed and eaten. He therefore proceeded to engage in a mock charge against the beast, in order to have a convincing story. He then returned to his companions waiting nearby and brought them back to where the dragon lay. He had the beast's head removed and returned with it to German's castle, announcing that he had at last killed the dragon and claiming his right to Isolde's hand in marriage. Princess Isolde, who despised the seneschal, became distraught at this news. But her mother, Queen Isolde, was not called Isolde the Wise for no reason. Suspicious of the seneschal's claims, she reassured her daughter that they'd find a way out of this predicament. That very night she had a dream that confirmed her doubts, and in the morning she assembled a small party and headed to where the dragon's remains laid. In short order they found the unconscious Tristan. Queen Isolde recognized that the knight was under the influence of some kind of poison, and so they took him back to the castle, entering through a secret gate so that no one would know of his presence, and for the next days the queen used her knowledge of healing to counteract the poison, Tristan gradually regaining his health. The day came for the seneschal to formally make his case and his claim to Princess Isolde. All the court were assembled as witnesses as he reminded the king of his pledge, and told of his vanquishing of the dragon. He then presented the dragon's head as his proof. Well, as you no doubt already know, our newly recovered hero arrived just in time, and the dragon's maw was opened and shown to be empty, Tristan then producing the dragon's tongue for all to see. The seneschal, proven to be a liar and a fraud, was left muttering in defeat, and Tristan was able to rightfully claim Isolde's hand in the name of King Mark. Wagner's Tristan und Isolde begins shortly after this point in Gottfried's story, on the voyage from Ireland to deliver Isolde to King Mark. It's understandable that Wagner chose not to utilize the story of the dragon's tongue in his drama. He had just completed the dragon fight episode in his music drama Siegfried when he set it aside in order to compose Tristan und Isolde, and one dragon fight per career is probably a good rule of thumb for any opera composer. But it's not just coincidental that Wagner chose the aftermath of Siegfried's dragon fight as a point to break off his work and commence with Tristan und Isolde, beginning immediately after Tristan's dragon fight. It serves as a gentle reminder that our dragon, the Tristan Code, must contain a dragon's tongue as well, and that the place to find it lies just within the beast's maw, that is, just before Wagner's story begins. The prelude to Act 1 of Tristan und Isolde, the Einleitung we discussed in the previous chapter, takes up 11 pages in the original score. On the top of the 12th page, or if you will, just inside the mouth of Wagner's work, wedged between the introduction and the beginning of the story proper, is the sailor's song, and lying within it, unperceived and undisturbed, is our dragon's tongue. The beast we're led to slay is the Tristan Code, but our dragon has more than one head, several in fact. Each must be vanquished in turn, but our dragon's tongue must fit in one manner or the other into all of them. In order to ensure such universality, Wagner turned to the universal language of mathematics. A fair number of commentators and biographers have mentioned Richard Wagner's fascination with numbers, but none have provided more than a few scattered examples of this interest, and no one has ever suggested that it might have any substantial influence on his works. Until now. For Wagner has marked out our path through the Tristan Code with a group of very carefully chosen numbers, with a very specific relationship, and a very special set of properties. These numbers are encrypted in the music of the Sailor's Song. In the previous chapter of the Tristan Code, I demonstrated that Wagner had deliberately written the music of the Sailor's Song in the wrong two-flat key signature, and by invoking the two rules I introduced, indicated that in so performing this seemingly senseless act, he was in fact trying to tell us something. Wagner expects us to uncover the information he encrypted in this passage by first recognizing that his incorrect notation is intentional, and then simply noting the actual effect this apparent error has on the music. This example shows how the music would appear if written with a single three-flat key signature. And this is how it appears in Wagner's deliberately errant two-flat notation. The changes seen here are few and deceptively minor. First off, there are, of course, two key signatures, where there would be but one. There are then 7 notes, all A's, that have to have the flats written in before them. Now, in a more analytical mode, the two key signatures, as structural markers, divide the notes of the passage, placing 67 notes in the first key and 1 in the second. These 3 effects are the extent of the alterations needed to accommodate Wagner's seemingly inexplicable notation. Their only other commonality, and therefore their only possible purpose in Wagner's scheme, is quantitative. 2 key signatures, 7 flats, and the notes divided into 67 and 1. A similar mathematical criterion determined Wagner's placement of the other structural markers, the 4 time signatures, as these further divide the notes into 29, 16, 22, and 1. Now don't feel too bad if it's not immediately apparent that these numbers are related by more than happenstance. Things become much clearer when we separate the notes of the Sailor's Song by their time value, as this uncovers an unmistakable consistency in Wagner's allotments. We start with the half notes. There are 11 of these. Next are the quarter notes. These number 11. Then the eighth notes, and there are 11 of these. Then the eighth note triplets, numbering 11. Now, there are 11 dotted notes, but these consist of 4 dotted quarters and 7 dotted eighths. The remainder of the notes are 7 16th notes and 4 tied notes, although these are all of unique time values, so you may prefer to call them 4 single note types. Last and least are the 2 grace notes. This quantitative consistency is maintained when we count the other notational elements. Wagner's incorrect key signature required 7 notes to be marked with flats. There are then 4 notes with natural signs and 2 notes with sharps. There are 4 quarter rests and 4 eighth rests. There's 1 half rest. There are 4 instructions in text, 4 open hairpins, crescendos if you prefer, and 2 closed hairpins. There are 2 fermati. The passage is written on a single staff using 1 clef. There are a total of 121 notes, symbols, and instructions in the Sailor's Song, and all but 11 of these are allotted in groups of 11, 7, 4, 2, or 1. Now briefly, these other 11 symbols, outliers as it were, consist of 3 piano signs, 3 forte signs, and 5 phrase marks. Note that although their individual quantities deviate from our previous counts, their collective total of 11 is far from incidental. The function of these symbols will be discussed in full in a later chapter. But for now, we can add these quantities that Wagner's repeatedly used to the previous group of numbers. We can also include the total number of symbols, 121. When we place all these accumulated numbers in their proper order, their relationship to one another perhaps becomes more clear. But just in case it doesn't, we'll have a short math lesson. Our group of numbers represent a sequence of addition, wherein one more is added at each step. Starting with 1, we add 1 to get 2. To that is added 2 to get our next number, 4, with 3 added to that for 7, and continuing through 11, 16, 22, and 29. To that, we add 8 to get 37, a member of the sequence we haven't seen yet. If we consider our highest number, 121, as an upper limit for now, we can see that Wagner has implied, in the notation of the Sailor's Song, the first 16 members of the sequence. Of these, we have so far seen 10. This number sequence, innocuous as it may seem, is then our dragon's tongue. It will be our measure of proof as we move through the Tristan Code. It will serve both as a means of identifying Wagner's puzzles and as a guide to their solutions. The number 46, for instance, is the 10th member of our set, and the by now unsurprising fact that the text of the Sailor's Song contains 46 words tells us that they're also a part of the Tristan Code, and that there's something waiting to be discovered within them. Recall that famous first minute and a half of Wagner's Ein Liedtum with its 4 Tristan chords. The most basic unit of musical time is the beat, and this passage is 79 beats long, which is the 13th member of our sequence. By recognizing this, we'll not only find a puzzle hidden within these 4 phrases, we'll match that same number to a location where Wagner left us some clues to its solution. The dragon's tongue will lead us to many answers, but also to new questions. Why did Wagner choose these particular numbers? Where does this sequence come from? Those answers are already nearer when we recall the question posed in the previous chapter. What is the Tristan chord? I said then that the answer to that question is not to be found in its musical manifestation, and now, for the first time, we have the opportunity to find our way clear from the preconceptions inherent in the written notes. Instead, we'll examine Wagner's chord as it appears on the keyboard. The Tristan chord uses notes F, B, D sharp, and G sharp. But if we number the notes, beginning with that first F, we see that the Tristan chord also uses notes 1, 7, 11, and 16, all 4 numbers being members of our sequence. The answers to the questions about the origin of both the Tristan chord and of our number sequence would seem to be interwoven, or at least discoverable along the same path of inquiry. The Tristan Code began with Wagner's discovery of a Diederik, a hidden skeleton key provided by Gottfried von Strasberg, which Wagner then used to solve Gottfried's 13th century puzzle. It therefore wouldn't have been right for Wagner not to have in turn supplied us with the Diederik for our use in solving the Tristan Code. In the next installment, we'll see the elaborate lengths to which the composer went to ensure we would find our Diederik, which is indeed the key to the castle.